Hey soldiers, how can you acquire and control a piece of real property with no money down? There are quite a few ways. We're going to go over one of those today. We're going to change up the format. We're going to enhance the format of the channel. And we're going to start looking at practical ways for you to actually take advantage of what's going on in our world and our ever-evolving global economy practically. Okay, not just theory. Let's get into some application. So we're going to be doing more videos in terms of how to actually think about gaining an advantage in terms of acquiring assets and making them work for you. We're going to do that today by talking about how to acquire some real estate with no money down. And I know a lot of people hear phrases like that, no money down, and their programming starts to kick in. Oh, that's impossible. Oh, that's some scam. I'm not falling for that. Listen, watch this video until the end. And I think that if anyone approaches this with a clear mind and dispenses with what you've been programmed with, okay, we as Americans have been programmed with a lot of stuff that keeps us from enjoying our full financial capability. All right? It behooves the power structure for us to stay in a job, not to get too fancy and creative. They want us paying that income tax off of a W-2, off of the W-2 employee structure, because that is the most onerous aspect of the tax code. W-2, you've got the least amount of deductions, the least amount of different types of laws to help you decrease your tax burden. And we talk about it all the time, how taxes are going up, not down. So you need to understand how to bring that burden down. So one way to do that is getting involved with real estate, right? And if you hang on to the end, not only are we going to talk to you about acquiring property with no money down, but we're also going to share with you how you can then use that in a tax advantaged way. Okay. All right. So look, real quick example of dispensing with the programming. My wife and I, she is an MBA, has an MBA degree. She also had corporate positions, back in the day before we started our businesses. Of course, I've told you before, I was a lobbyist, had other lofty corporate positions, right? I was a legislative assistant. Now, when the programming kicks in, it has a way of making you believe, I've seen this happen. It has a way of making you believe that these titles, these degrees that have been conferred upon you, put you in a position where, oh, I can't do that. What are you talking about? I pay for my real estate using a mortgage. No money down. It, again, sounds like a scam to me. All right. Or put you in a mode where you can't do things because you think those things are beneath you now. Things that would really push you in terms of income far beyond whatever it is you're making at your corporate job. Case in point. When my wife and I first started these businesses, we went out and knocked on doors. Okay. Yeah. And some people said he was a lobbyist. Now he's knocking on doors. Yeah. Because I was building my business. Because if the people that criticized me, if their bosses at their jobs had came to them and said, hey, we're going to start knocking on doors and telling the public about the Fortune 500 corporation, they would have done it. Okay, but my wife and I, we were doing it for our own company, right? So we started to build our company by going back to grassroots. Now I think the days of door knocking are over. I'm talking about the late 2000s at that time. But for a variety of factors, I think knocking on doors is a thing of the past at this point. But we did it. We held seminars. We did all kinds of stuff to grow the business, and we never let programming get in the way. So I just want to put that out there. Dispense with the programming. Think creatively. Now, what am I talking about in terms of no money down? There are a couple of ways to do this. Now, when I say acquire and control property with no money down, I am speaking of a property that you want to acquire in order to improve, and then sell for a higher price to generate a capital gain, okay? Return on your investment. So let's use some very basic numbers here. And I'm going to use basic numbers, but I'm also going to talk about one project in particular that my wife and our company actually did, all right? So let's say that you are looking at a property and you do your due diligence. And remember, real estate is a hyper-local market. So things are going to change, not just from zip code to zip code, but sometimes from block to block. Sometimes comparables or, comparable sales. Okay, what one piece of real estate costs versus another. Sometimes that will vary from one side of the street to the other because real estate's hyper-local. But you've done your due diligence and you know that move-in ready properties in a certain area that you're looking at are, let's just use easy numbers here, going for 100 grand. Now, I know property's going for a lot more than that here nearing the end of 2023 in most areas of the country. But let's just say 100 grand, keep it simple. All right, so you know about how much you stand to gain if you had a move-in ready property in a certain area. All right, so you identify a property that is not worth that because it's not move-in ready. It needs updating. It needs maybe a new HVAC system, for example, new paint, new carpet, or refinished wood floors, whatever it is. All right. Again, that's part of your due diligence with figuring out what it's going to take to bring this property up to market value. Now, here's something very key. In bringing it up to market value, you're not living in this house. So while you want to make sure that it's absolutely safe, while you want to update it to the current standards, this doesn't have to be a Taj Mahal. I've seen people improve properties to the point where they can't recoup what they spent because the area doesn't demand marble floors. The area doesn't demand, a powder room on the first floor. Okay, for example, all right? You got to update it to the comparable standards of wherever it is. So, $100,000, you look at everything. You can get $100,000 if it's move-in ready. You look at everything and determine that it's going to take $30,000 to improve this property. Okay? So $30,000, you've got to go in now and make an offer. So the house may not even be on the market. Usually it's not being sold by a realtor. One of the ways that we also figured out what properties were for sale but not listed, we sent out a lot of postcards. Okay, we sent out tons of postcards and we got tons of responses. But from that total amount, there were few that met our criteria. We had to sift through. Okay, so we got one property where the guy said, listen, I inherited this property. I tried to rent it out. It's a disaster. I just evicted the guy, but this place, he just ruined it. You want to come take a look? So I said, sure, because I knew this was an area where we could make some money, potentially. So went down there, looked at the property. Let's stick with our example. Determined over time that it would cost $30,000 to improve the property, bring it up to snuff standards, comparable to move-in ready properties in the area. So I offered him, because, he just wants out at this point. So I offered him $30,000. All right. So at this point, if he accepted the offer, which he did, 60 grand, because we got to pay him 30, and then we got to pay 30 for the repairs and improvements on the property, right? All right, so that's 60. We said it's going for 100. Okay, so we got a $40,000 spread in there. But now in order to make this work, we've got to control the property. So we've got to go out and get a loan, right, for $60,000 in order to pay him and then also do the work, right? Well, here's what we did instead. And this is the no money down technique. We went to this gentleman and we said, hey, we'll pay you $30,000 now. Or we'll pay you $40,000 after the property is improved. If you carry the note, you carry it. We commit to be in and out of here within 60 days. And at the end of that time, we don't give you anything until then. You still own the property. He still owns it, okay? We control it. All of this has to be drawn up legally. It has to be airtight, all right? With some conditions in it such that if he fails to perform, he owes us, right? I'm just giving you the broad strokes here. So by and by, he said, yeah, all right, fine. I'll take the 40 in 60 days instead of 30 now. So now we're into this property for $70,000 with $30,000 that we're looking at getting in the event we can go ahead and turn this over. So we went in and listen, when these people agree, we've got a dumpster there the very next morning. And we're cleaning that property out and we're getting ready for folk to come in that afternoon and start to go through the items that we've already identified that need to be improved upon. Now, working with these contractors is a totally different video. It's much more in-depth. We'll get to that at some point. So, okay, we don't have any money in this, we haven't tied up any of our capital because we're going to pay him after the property sells, all right? If he gives us 60 days, we can get in there in 30, improve the property, and we're highly confident that we can make something happen within the next, really, 5 weeks. We can get in there and do our thing in 3 weeks, okay? When the property sells, then he will get paid, all right? So we're not tied up at that point with cash flow issues because, or loans, or we haven't extended our credit, okay, because we don't have a loan. Now, where's that other $30,000 coming from to repair the property? Well, that is coming from our coffers, okay, because we've done other properties and we've got some money to work with. We can make a deal with contractors depending on how long we worked with them, what they're going to do to get them paid at the end of the process. And if you have a relationship with contractors, they could feel confident that this is going to happen, because if it doesn't, they can always slap a mechanic's lien on the property and quash any sale. Okay, story for another day. That's something that they have in their quiver. So we get in, we improve it, we get out. Now, in this particular instance, when we invited that man back into that house to show him what we'd done, he said, wow, this, if I didn't walk in the door, I wouldn't believe it was the same property. All right, we updated it. It looked really, really good. We actually had a buyer for that pretty soon because we had done some marketing to let school teachers, police officers, firefighters in the area know that this house was coming onto the market soon. Sure enough, we got a buyer rather swiftly. They settled within 30 days, and we, paid him his money. We got $100,000. Actually, got a little bit more than $100,000 because it was a bidding war. It was a little bit more. We paid him his 40. We put our 30 back, any of it that we had spent. Most of it was just going to contractors who had extended us time until this thing got done. And then we went ahead and, pocketed a cool $30,000. But that $30,000 is going to come with some tax obligations, of course. Now, before I get to how we handle that, I want you to also know that this was done at a point before what's called a seasoning law came into effect, where certain FHA properties now, they have to be held for a certain amount of time before they transfer, okay? So you need to look into that. I'm not going to go deep into that because that kind of thing changes. I want to give you the broad strokes. And if you need more, of course, you're going to have to look into it in your specific situation. I don't want to say something and then you watch this video a year later and the whole thing has changed, okay? All right, as far as the tax advantage that I was speaking of earlier with regard to investment real estate, we employed a 1031 exchange on this property. What is a 1031 exchange? It is a tax advantage. It's tax deferred option, so that when you sell a property and you get proceeds or profit from that property, your capital gains, instead of paying taxes on those proceeds immediately, you can, and I'm giving you broad strokes, you can defer those taxes in order to put those proceeds into another investment property. Okay, so allowing you to legally defer the taxation in order to use all those proceeds from the sale to enhance your real estate investment portfolio. Now, it's tax deferral, meaning at some point you will be responsible for taxes on some property down the road. Now, with regard to this technique, the 1031 exchange, you're going to need to talk to your financial professional, your tax professional, because it has nuances. It can be very complex. It's not just as easy as saying, oh, I'm going to do this. No, we never want to run afoul of the IRS, because the reality is there's a lot of benefit in that tax code, but we got to use it correctly. So the 1031 exchange is out there for your investment purposes, but you got to use it in the way prescribed by the IRS, and your tax professional or professionals will know exactly how to do that. So guys, that's how to go in and purchase some investment real estate with no money down. Okay, you just got to be bold enough to dispense with any programming that makes you believe falsely that owners of properties will not take these deals. Trust me, they do all the time. Okay, guys, I'll talk to you soon.